Welcome to Apple IT Trends 2019. We're going to walk through a lot of content here today, but just briefly, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Garrett, Solutions Architect here at Jamf. And today, like I said, we're going to walk through a little bit about the company and then really take a deep dive into where Apple was in 2018, rounding out the year here right now, and take a look ahead to Apple in 2019. We'll complete this webinar with a few IT initiatives to consider, and if you're here live, I do have some next steps and time for Q&A. If you're watching this as a recording, feel free to reach out to our team during that time. We've got plenty of people standing by on both our sales and support organizations that would love to talk. So first of all, a brief introduction to Jamf. This is not a sales webinar, but I want to start, especially for those of you that are brand new to the organization, and just level set and kind of set the table a bit and talk about who we are, where we came from, and what we're doing today. So first of all, Jamf as a company has been around about 16 years, and our mission, our core goal here is to help organizations succeed with Apple. This is something you will hear on all of our different teams, all the way up to our CEO. It's a pretty common phrase. In fact, we have it on the wall here at a number of our offices, just as kind of a reminder of what we're trying to accomplish with software. Now, speaking of software, our product portfolio has 3 core products. 2 of them are what are called MDM solutions, or mobile device management solutions. On the small and medium business side, Jamf now was built for the ground up to be streamlined device management. No IT required. Specifically, if you're a founder, you're a president, a CEO, an assistant, an operations person, but you're in that small and medium business environment. And what you really need is to spend less time managing Apple devices and more time doing other tasks. That's the core competency of Jamf now. It's very good at helping you quickly and in a streamlined manner manage your Apple hardware and get back to doing other things. Now, on the flip side, if you're someone that's saying, I really need the power to be more granular and have more control over my Apple hardware, that is the core competency of Jamf Pro. It's very good at empowering you to kind of be a superhero in your environment, to do more, to look at this in a more deep manner, and to really have more control in contextual and intelligent ways with your software. Now, Jamf Now and Jamf Pro are our MDM solutions. The third solution on this page, Jamf Connect, is specifically for identity and account management. We acquired a company called Orchard and Grove. They were the makers of Nomad in the fall of 2018. Now, we're really excited. We continue to offer the Nomad open source solution. We love the open source community here at Jamf, and we love offering that open source solution for free still after the acquisition. In fact, we've added on Jamf support as an option for our open source users. But in addition to that, if you're an enterprise business or you really have a need around identity or account management, we now have Jamf Connect, a paid version and enterprise version of that software available as part of our core product portfolio here at Jamf. A little validation here, especially if you are brand new. We've been around, as I said, 16 plus years. Today, more than 15,000 organizations rely on Jamf, and collectively they're managing 11 million Apple devices around the world. Now, a lot of great stats here. 9 of the top 10 tech companies, 22 of the top 25 most valuable brands on the planet, and over 4,000 schools. In fact, that's approaching 5,000 as we record this webinar. So very exciting stuff. We've been around a while, and we serve everyone from mom and pop shops to tech startups to growing medium-sized businesses, all the way up to the biggest companies in the world. A little preview here, and I want to demonstrate 2 things. These are screenshots from the UI of Jamf Now and Jamf Pro. 2 things that I, again, want to call out. One is the UI on both products is similar. The design language is similar across those 2 MDM products, those device management products. That's important because we do have people that start on Jamf Now and grow into a Jamf Pro user. It's not right for me today, but who knows? In 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years down the road, our company is growing, our needs are growing, and I'll need to get more granular and more empowered. Well, we want you to have at least some similar cues within the product. The products, they are separate. They're not identical solutions. But as you move from one to the other, whichever one that is, we want you to feel like you're still at home with Jamf. The second thing I want to call out here is really the simplicity and streamlined nature of these products. Apple, of course, the global leader in intuitive design. I think they do this better than anyone, and it goes back to that old phrase from Steve Jobs, it just works, right? And that's still true today. Apple sets the bar very high with their industrial and UI design. What we want to do is, as a company, really rise to that level and rise to the occasion and design software that, again, is very intuitive if you're brand new, but it's also very powerful if you're an old Jamf Pro veteran, if you've been with us 3, 5, 10, 15 years since our products were conceived. Now, we have a pretty cool promise here at Jamf that we've been making for a number of years called Day Zero Support. And you'll see on this slide, going back to 2010, we have been making this promise to our users. In 2010, when this was brand new, kind of a new concept for us, these were the days of iOS 4, if you can believe that, if you remember back to 2010 and were managing Apple devices at that time. When those were released, those versions of iOS and macOS, Snow Leopard and iOS 4, within 5 days, we had compatibility and support for those versions of their operating systems. The next year, we said we can do better, and we did. We got that down to a 1-day lag between the public release of iOS 5 and macOS and our support for those new versions of the operating systems. By the next year, 2012, it was down to 0 day. So day zero support. It means when they're available, Jamf is ready to go. What we ultimately want is a better quality of life for you by empowering you to know, hey, all of my users, they're going to run home tonight, specifically with iOS devices. We see this a lot, where the new version comes out, it's got some new features, it has some new security, and they're going to rush and try to download that right away when it's available. Well, with Jamf on your side, we are ready to go. And I'm recording this at the tail end of 2018 here, and I'm excited to add a new dot on this chart as we head into 2019. We're closing out the year, and once again, we hit day zero support. Again, with iOS 12, the latest version of tvOS, and macOS Mojave. Very excited. That's a great streak to kind of keep alive here at Jamf. We organize a lot of our engineering and development effort around this, our cloud and delivery effort around this goal. It's a very big deal internally, and a lot of our customers will tell you that this is deeply appreciated because, again, it's peace of mind. It's quality of life for your end user, but it's peace of mind for you as the Jamf administrator. So let's step out of the Jamf mindset for a minute and take a look back at 2018 in review. This began, of course, in the spring with a very unique event. Apple has March events most years, in fact, I think almost every year, but this year was a little different, and the different twist was that for the second time only, it was an education event. That's a very big deal, and if you're thinking about this strategically, why is Apple dedicating their spring March event to education? Why now, and why that industry? And the answer became very clear once we started watching that event unfold. The answer was Apple, already a strong player and a very long history of playing in education. They are doubling down on the education industry. So there's a brand new version of iPad that comes out. It's very great. It's got new hardware, new internals, very fast. It's a very well-built machine. But specifically, what's interesting is with a brand new piece of hardware, the price stays the same at $299 for education institutions. That's critical. And I'm speaking directly to those of you watching right now that work within the education field. You know this even better than I do, that budget is key, and you need to be able to predict hardware refresh costs ahead of time. And to keep that price the same for a brand new piece of cutting-edge hardware, I think was just critical. Now, the second bullet here, education applications. Apple has a long history of developing and supporting free first-party applications specifically for the education environment. Now, Classroom is one of the big ones. If you haven't used that and you work again within that education field, take a look. Dive in more deeply. That is definitely worth your time. One thing I also want to call out here from the spring event is an update to iOS. And this is just something I think is kind of at the confluence of Apple changing new hardware on one hand with a new iPad, new software to support education, and framing this whole event under the education banner is what happens when you deploy more Apple devices in the classroom, but they leave the classroom. Super common question. And when you move into a school for the first time or you're growing that device deployment, you'll see, well, we've got to address the firewall and we have to have content filtering and provide a safe, protected environment for you using those devices during school hours. But what happens when that 3 o'clock bell rings and the student with that one-to-one iPad deployment leaves the building? That is a fantastic question, and most often it's parents asking that question. It comes to mind right away. What do I do? Is there a way to protect my child while they're not a student during the school day? And the answer is yes. Apple, again, in their effort to double down on education, has provided some great content and privacy restrictions, which you can see right here in part. You can also find these on your iOS device yourself. The key here, though, is not just iTunes restrictions or allowed applications like you'll see on the bottom of the screen. The key here is we are empowering parents. Apple specifically is empowering parents to take greater control of those devices outside the classroom. This is a key partnership between empowering teachers and empowering parents and kind of creating this environment around the student 360 degrees. That's a really key move that they have made in 2018. I expect this kind of as a preview to continue in 2019, but we'll touch on that later in this presentation. So flash forward. It's September now, September 2018, and of course we are whipping past Apple's WWDC, the Worldwide Developer Conference that happens in the summer. A lot of the content that's announced at WWDC is really a preview of what's coming in the fall. So we're going to skip past that and just dive directly into their September event. And of course, for the Apple nerds like me, you're in good company. You're seeing this picture here. This is Steve Jobs Theater, brand new on the Apple campus in California. So kind of a nice, just a nice view there. But thinking more of software and hardware, their September event, iOS 12 and macOS Mojave, of course, the latest and greatest versions of their operating systems. On the right-hand side of the screen, you will see Mojave running dark mode, which is kind of exciting. You won't build a business case around dark mode, I don't think. But again, this is just a little treat for those of you that like to live and play in the Apple ecosystem. For macOS users, you're going to love using dark mode if you haven't already. At least I do. I think it's very cool. But speaking about features that you will build a business case around, and whether you're in education or commercial business, there are, I think, 3 high-level themes that really bubble to the surface during this September event: privacy, security, and education. And in fact, I think you can make a compelling argument that this is really 2. So it's privacy and security is a single theme, and education is the second theme on top of that. Why do I think these are kind of the things that bubbled up? Well, first of all, I don't think it takes any level of deep knowledge to know that privacy and security were absolutely the themes of the industry in 2018. They were all over the news, they were all over the headlines, and they absolutely have staying power heading into next year. And Apple saw that and did some really important things to shore up and really, again, use that word, double down, or use those words rather, double down on privacy and security. In their Safari browser, the default browser with both operating systems, they introduced something called intelligent tracking prevention. Why should we know about this? It's pretty technical. Well, this is a technology that blocks social media buttons and comment widgets, which I think we all see everywhere, right? If you read news sites, if you go on any kind of forums, you probably have seen these things. It prevents those buttons and widgets from tracking users without permission. This is something that was happening kind of in the shadows, and Apple identified that and said, our users should know and be alerted when that is happening. So intelligent tracking prevention is one way that they are taking a step forward to better protect the privacy of their users, to empower the user to know when they're being tracked. Now, the other thing that they introduced, this is fairly technical, so if you haven't heard about this, don't worry about it, but it's called PPPC. Privacy Preferences Policy Control. Again, you will not be quizzed. That's alphabet soup. There is no test at the end of this webinar. But the reason I bring it up is because that is a very important step that Apple took that allowed their software to alert users when they were being asked for permissions by an application, permission to view something about that user. So an app might say, I need access to your calendar, or access to Siri or your microphone or your camera. You can imagine all of the different permissions that different apps request. And again, Apple said, hey, this is happening in the background. Our users deserve to know. We want to empower our users to know when they are being asked for something. And with PPPC, that came to the forefront, and it's now presented to the user in a really kind of big and bold way. I think it's just a fantastic step forward. We have built-in compatibility with Jamf Pro 10.9 that shipped in the fall of 2018 that addressed that and made that possible for our users. And we built on that in Jamf Pro 10.9 or 10.8, excuse me, and then we built on that in 10.9 as well. Both of those shipped in the fall of 2018. Powerful stuff. All right, so let's put on my prediction cap, and this is surely something that will come back in 12 months to haunt me because I will be maybe close to the mark on some, but wildly off base on others. But I'm going to do my best to kind of read the tea leaves here and assemble the clues that we know about Apple and really put together some predictions for 2019. The first is the great Windows migration. Now, why do I say this? What's the backstory? Well, the backstory is Windows 7 is a very popular operating system. It's deployed on several 100 million devices globally. But in January 2020, the Windows 7 operating system will hit end of life for support. Why is that important? Well, first of all, a lot of enterprise businesses, education facilities that are deploying Windows 7, they rely on security patching in a really big way. You need that to make it a secure, and it's kind of table stakes to make it a secure operating system, right? Well, when end of life hits for support, we will no longer have free and automatic patching for that operating system. You can certainly pay for it. It's fairly expensive. If you'd like to pony up and do that, you can do that for your Windows 7 machines. Our prediction here at Jamf is that will really prompt a lot of businesses to take a step back and ask a couple of questions. Like, first of all, how many of our staff want an Apple device? Have we ever asked? And if we have, let's gather some new data. Hey, no promises. We're not making a promise or a commitment to any kind of Apple deployment, but we're searching this out. Let us know, yay or nay, would you use a Mac, for example? And when you get that data back, maybe that's something that can really kind of spur the conversation around this Windows 7 change. Hey, we know in a year's time, that in January 2020, this change is coming. And well before that, we want to have this addressed, which means that right now, whether it's late 2018, early 2019, we should have that discussion. So gather that data. Take a look, and if you're worried about the cost of these devices, we have a fantastic case study featuring Fletcher Previn and his organization at IBM, where they really dug into the data and found that every Mac that they deploy saves the company money. You heard that right. It might be a higher upfront cost. When you factor in repairs and support of that device, it saves IBM money to deploy more Macs. That is a really big deal. Shook the industry back in 2016, and we're still seeing that evolve at IBM. That is a really significant case study for us. macOS security will continue to evolve, absolutely. This is something that we saw in 2018, and I think this is a big keystone touch point heading into next year. The T2 chip, if you don't know about this chip architecture, is built with security in mind first, right? So this is something you're seeing in the latest version of MacBooks that is shipping native in the latest version of MacBooks. And when you buy one of those machines with the T2 chip on board, this is critical. You cannot image that machine. It kills that process. So imaging, I say on this slide, continues to fade. Really, imaging has been dead, and this is the final stake in the coffin. As we move into the future, this is the clearest sign yet that imaging is dead. The T2 chip killed it for sure. It's really been on the way out the door for a number of years, but this is the stopping point. The buck stops here, and as you think about this, maybe your entire device deployment is not refreshing this year, but you're going to have 30% turnover, and then some more next year and the year after. Be thinking about this, especially if you rely on an imaging workflow. You want to have this conversation now, proactively, and start to think about how to integrate devices with that chip on board into a modern device management workflow. Now, calling back to Apple's October event. Now, I already talked about the September event, of course, but there was an October event, and it was really interesting. There was a HomePod enhancement announced there, which I love to see. This is a powerful, intelligent speaker. If you don't know about the HomePod, it's basically premium audio plus Siri, I think is a fair way to talk about that. This is really coming in as, kind of a big, powerful, the audiophiles speaker. It's got great sound, but also it's something for the home where you can use it to do day-to-day tasks, check on things, and so forth. But I don't want to look at this from a consumer perspective. I want to look at this from a business perspective and think about a future where every boutique hotel could use one of these HomePods as a differentiator. Think about the future where every hotel chain, multinational hotel chain or hospital could use this as table stakes and say, we're changing the industry. This will be in every room. Because Apple is so focused on privacy, I feel comfortable putting this device and only this device in every room. And because it's now under MDM management, which is not true today, remember, we're looking ahead now. But when this happens, we can manage these at scale. Imagine wiping this device every time a patient checks out, or a guest leaves your hotel, or somebody new moves into a certain office space. There are a lot of different ways you can imagine using this in the not too distant future, and it hinges on growing device management capability. Will we see that in 2019? I give it a 50-50 shot. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. But if not 2019, I'd put some money on 2020. I do think this is the direction Apple is going, and we'll see more of this in the future. Continued growth in the enterprise. Apple cares deeply about Apple in the enterprise, specifically Mac in the enterprise. This is absolutely a focus, and they really made some strides in 2018 in the enterprise by launching Apple Business Manager. If you're on a legacy program, the Volume Purchase Program, VPP, or the Device Enrollment Program, DEP, they are no longer accepting enrollment in those programs. They have been migrated and integrated into Apple Business Manager. They're now called Volume Purchasing of Apps and Books. That's the new term for VPP. And the new term for DEP is Automated MDM Enrollment. So both of those functions wrapped up and integrated into Apple Business Manager. That's a really big deal, and it's a very clear sign that Apple is not content to rest in its laurels and just watch enterprise do its thing. They are investing with new technology like Apple Business Manager for the enterprise. This is specifically built for you if you work in commercial business. It's free. Check it out. business.apple.com. Go take a look. If you're not using that program, you absolutely should be. Again, circling back on Fletcher Previn, I kind of previewed this earlier. We are deploying more Macs every month, but not requiring more help staff to support these users. This is game-changing. If you think about any other technology, you scale it and you must scale headcount. There's almost no exception to that rule, but because of their workflow with automated MDM enrollment, deploying applications in bulk, and using a tool that A, saves their company money, which is the Apple platform, and B, is preferred by their users, they are actually able to scale this without adding headcount. This is such a big deal, and it's true, I think, at businesses of all sizes. You just scale the impact, right? If you're a small mom and pop, well, that's great news. You can now deploy and manage devices with something like Jamf Now and really save yourself a lot of time. If you're a multinational like IBM, this statement might be a one-to-one carbon copy. Definitely take a look. I just encourage you to get data-driven like Fletcher did. Apple also, of course, doubling down on education. The Apple School Manager app is kind of the equivalent of Apple Business Manager, but for schools. I'll just say right off the top, if you're not using Apple School Manager, but you work in education, you need to use it. So take a look. Again, it's free. Go sign up for that today. This is an iOS-first approach, and that's because we're seeing iPads primarily really driving that one-to-one deployment and interaction of digitally empowered curriculum, right? So students coming into the classroom and having a whole new way of engaging with next-generation content because of their technology. You can see Learn to Code with their Swift platform right in the middle there. This is a really fun game that is actually curriculum that Apple developed. I've gone through this. A lot of Jamfs have gone through this just for fun, just to kind of see the program at work, and it is phenomenally polished. It's free, so definitely go take a look. Learn to Code with Swift. I want to call out Mike here. He was at our Jamf Nation user conference, JNUC, in the fall of 2018, the fall of this year, and he had a really profound quote. The cost of textbooks and supplies in 1 year at the Ohio State University is $61 million. I want that to be zero, and this initiative gets us there. And Mike is talking specifically about how they leverage Jamf Pro. This is a really big deal, and again, as we see curriculum start to take more and more advantage of digital tools, digital tool sets, new hardware, Apple is absolutely in that conversation and at the front of that conversation. The best way to manage those one-to-one deployments, Jamf Pro. Take a look. Definitely, if you are working in any kind of higher education, a big school like the Ohio State, Jamf Pro is your native tool. If you're a smaller school or you want more streamlined management, Jamf Now, absolutely take a look. Now, what should we consider heading into 2019? Great question, and we have a couple of kind of brain teaser slides here just to get the juices flowing. You know, if you're thinking, I'm not sure, we've got a few Apple devices or maybe none at all, where do I begin? How do I even start this conversation? Well, the first is to prepare for more Apple devices. Apple continues to be the dominant and preferred platform at home. You ask anyone what phone they're using, you have an 80 or better % chance of hitting on an iPhone right there. And because they're used at home, people are already educated in that design language, in that intuitive experience of the Apple platform. They want to bring it into work because they already know that it works in their home life. So let's enable that. Talk to Jamf about our cloud infrastructure, about Jamf Cloud. We would absolutely love to have a conversation about if you're already on a cloud ecosystem, how ours compares. If you're on an on-premise situation, what it looks like to migrate to the cloud. That is absolutely a conversation that we will have, even if you're not ready to migrate today. Take a look. We can talk, even if you're early in your journey. We'll come alongside you and have that discussion. The second teaser I want to throw out there is our Microsoft Intune integration. And this is, I would guess, not something you would expect to see on a slide deck from a company that is Apple exclusive. Jamf only manages Apple devices, right? That's why we're here. We are the gold standard for Apple management on the planet. But what about devices that are like Windows devices, particularly if you manage them through Microsoft Intune? Well, we have a very powerful partnership with Microsoft and Intune where you can manage devices in Jamf Pro and pull that data into your Intune dashboard. This is a really big deal. It is game-changing for a lot of reasons. You can find more on our website. But the one thing I'll say is if you manage through Intune today, think of that as your best solution for managing Windows devices. That's not Jamf's game. We do not want to get into that game. But think about Jamf Pro as your go-to gold standard for managing Apple devices as well. When you look at those side by side and particularly in tandem, you have two solutions that are built and best of breed for managing very specific parts of your deployment. Rather than asking one tool to do a lot of things, you're getting specific tools for the job at hand. This is why we have a wrench and a hammer, right? To use a very imperfect metaphor, because they do different things. And that's exactly what the difference is between Intune and a tool like Jamf Pro. With that integration, we can use the best tool for the job. I love showing this slide. This was Brad, corporate vice president at Microsoft. He's been to our conference on stage, on the main stage, keynote, twice, 2 years running. With Microsoft and Jamf, organizations can consolidate endpoint management and empower macOS users. Very powerful message there from Brad, a corporate VP at Microsoft. Just thinking about that Intune and Jamf Pro integration. Very powerful stuff. So let's recap very briefly here. The first thing I want to say is Jamf Pro, of course, zero-touch deployment, device config. If you're looking at kind of managing in a powerful way, this is probably the solution for you. And we're not on a sales webinar, so I will blaze through this part. But I just want to say cloud-hosted or on-prem, have a conversation with us. We'd love to talk about how we stack up, particularly in cloud, as that continues to be, by far, the best solution for Jamf Pro. Third-party integrations, we have a number of integrations available. The best place to look for those integrations is right here in the Jamf Marketplace. Go to marketplace.jamf.com, do a search, and see what tools that you're already leveraging that integrate with the Jamf platform. And finally, a few next steps before I cut this video off and let you get back to your day. I want to say, first of all, an open invitation to contact us to get started. If you have not had a conversation with Jamf yet, even if you're early in the process and you're going to say, look, I am not ready to talk about buying anything or switching solutions or even adopting a solution for the first time, that's okay. Once again, we would love to come alongside you and just get to know your business. That's the whole goal of helping organizations succeed with Apple, and we would love to see what you're trying to do, what your business growth looks like in the next year, and perhaps how Jamf fits in. So have a conversation, no pressure on that front. The second thing I'll say is a quick shout out to Jamf Nation. Just go to jamfnation.com. You can join more than 60,000 Apple IT admins, the largest Apple IT admin community in the world, right there on Jamf Nation. It's vibrant, it's living. If you want to kind of learn about the ecosystem and really kind of learn from your peers, this is the place to go. It's free, and you do not need to be a customer. So check that out. See how other people are talking about the solution and their challenges and solutions right there in real time. I'll end on this. John Edwards, the CIO for a corporation called RLH, Red Lion Hotels, and he had this fantastic quote. Once again, he's on stage at our Jamf Nation user conference. He's doing some revolutionary stuff at his hotel corporation. He says, our vision is how do we make the technology experience simpler for the guest. And to that I say, hey, amen, brother. This is absolutely the same thing that we are driving at here at Jamf. How do we make it simpler to leverage more Apple technology with less input from the admin? You are empowered with more control with Jamf Pro, and you are given a streamlined and curated experience with Jamf Now. We absolutely can come alongside you in either of those ways, so take a look, Jamf Now, Jamf Pro, or Jamf Connect for identity and account management. With that, I just want to encourage you to reach out if you have questions or comments. We're more than happy to engage in a sales process or just to learn, like I said, more about your organization. Thanks for joining us here today. Have a great one. Take care.